We're talking draft grades on Peacock and Williamson. Moving on to the AFC, starting in the East. The Bills, the Dolphins, the Patriots, the Jets. Some very different draft grades coming on today's program. Checking in post-draft on the AFC East right now.
You're listening to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show, your daily podcast on the National Football League, powered by the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock and Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Moving on to the AFC, Matt, and this is a fun division because every team is sort of in a different place rebuild-wise or in championship mode-wise. Every team has different philosophies, it feels like, and every team came out with just such wildly different draft classes for various reasons. So I think this is going to be a fun one. We'll start alphabetical here with those Buffalo Bills, and they nearly pulled it off. The Buffalo Bills traded or either up or down or had some pick involved with the trade with every single selection except for their third rounder. So nearly hit them all, which is always a fun thing when a team doesn't draft a single time in their original spot. But they did have the 25th pick in the third round that they held on to, and that one was not moved around. But let's start at the top. Speaking of moving around, going up to get Florida cornerback Kaiir Elam at pick 23. And this is a selection that I really like. I thought he was a player that deserved to go here, and I think it's a perfect fit in Buffalo. I love it. Nailed it. Get yourself just he wasn't so much sexy and exciting leading up to the draft. Nobody really wanted to talk about him, but he just hits everything. He's, a smart, tough player. Had really good production at Florida. He's got length. He's got athleticism. He can play in zone. He can play in man. He's just a really solid prospect. It's like you feel really good and feel safe about Kaiir Elam. None of these prospects are ever safe, but he feels like one of them late in the first round.
Yeah, I really looked at their needs as corner and then everything else. Like, I would have been very critical if they didn't come out with at least a day 2 corner. They did better than that, traded up for the guy they wanted. And the reasoning is, Levi Wallace went to Pittsburgh. Tre'Davious White is expensive and coming off an injury. But more important than that is they play nickel more than any team in the league. I mean, they live in nickel defense, either with 3 safeties or 3 corners. So it even puts more emphasis on their defensive backfield. And I think Elam's a perfect guy to play opposite White for all the reasons you mentioned. Little too physical with penalties and whatnot, but that's not an uncommon problem for corners, that get a little grabby, get a little physical, but they'll learn.
You would always want to try to coach out aggressiveness than not have it to begin with.
Right.
And you just see how that season ended. Like, I came away from last season, you watch Kansas City versus Buffalo, and it's like, wow. And let's cover these guys. Let's everything is, how do we make our nickel packages better? How do we stop a team that's just rolling and on fire and get off the stinking football field? So pass rushers, cornerbacks, and we saw a lot of that in this draft up and down, not just the Buffalo Bills. And it's interesting because Kansas City lost their best corner, and the Buffalo Bills added to the group in the first round. The James Cook pick is interesting because I always say that if you're going to draft a running back early, and it was, very late second round, so nearly a third round pick. And, once it's the third, fourth round area, I'm pretty good with running backs depending on the value there, but you better be valuable in the passing game too. And James Cook almost goes too far the other way, where I don't think he's going to be a big enough part of the offense that he'd be worth.
I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like you're having fun with it. And he's not going to be an every down running back, but does he have enough receiving skills to where they view that they think they got Alvin Kamara here? I'm wondering how they feel about this pick, because I see a very one-dimensional player, and it's still a little too high for a running back, even though he can be dynamic in the passing game.
So after the corner need, which I talked about, I felt like the Bills got a little cute or a little high on themselves, and kind of reminded me like when the Chiefs took Edwards-Helaire in the first round. And here's my reasoning behind it is man, we're the best team in the league, man. We don't need to deal with our infrastructure anymore. We already did that. We can get spare parts and cute little things like receiving backs and punters that are, they're called the punt god. We don't have to worry about what brought us here because we're only one little thing from being, a Super Bowl champion. And I just think teams get in trouble when they do those things, I really like Cook. I was told the Bills put a serious offer into Carolina for McCaffrey. Then they pivoted and had McKissick, who's an outstanding receiver, under contract, and he backed out. So they've been looking for this guy, the receiving back. There's a plan here in place, and there's a new offensive coordinator. Maybe he has something to do with it. So clearly they're looking for the receiving back. But as much as I like Cook, I don't think he's going to be McCaffrey or Kamara. I think he's a better version of James White or McKissick, but he's probably somewhere in between. And to me, that comes back to, are you so good that that's what you need with the 63rd pick?
And are they trying to force something that they've not really utilized, or just realizing we need that in our offense now? Is Josh Allen going to be a guy that wants to throw to his running back a lot, unless it's the play call, to get the ball to the running back in the passing game? And so fantasy wise, it's a weird one because I think a lot of people are really excited about it because they think that James Cook is going to be more of an every down guy. And I don't see that, especially early in his career. He just lacks the power. And so you still have, the Zach Moss Singletary thing. And it's just a committee that, PPR leagues, if Cook falls far enough, that's the player you'd probably want to have. Mm-hmm. But I think he's going to go too high. I think people see like, oh, this is the guy now because he's a second round running back, but I don't think he's going to take early carries away from those guys.
I 100% agree. And he's going, I have no problems with the player. Every team would love to have James Cook. I think he's a really good NFL player. But like in dynasty rookie drafts, he's going very high, like 8th or 9th overall. And I keep warning people, I'm like, where are the touchdowns going to come from? He's not going to be the short yardage back. I mean, he might catch 50 balls and run for 500 yards, but Josh Allen's going to score the touchdowns.
And he doesn't have the physical profile of a great like third down protector either. So I wonder if he might even not be on third downs all the time, So
he's not as sturdy as Kamara. I mean, Kamara's rare.
And Kamara was so good running inside the tackles, even though he wasn't very big, finding the creases and playing bigger than he was. And James Cook doesn't play big. So
rare contact balance and lower body strength for Kamara. Like, that's an unfair comparison. He's not going to be McCaffrey or Kamara.
So to have that huge value, if you're drafting, first round dynasty pick on James Cook, you're thinking that either he's going to be a bigger part of the running game on earlier downs, or he's going to get targeted so much that it's not going to matter. And I just don't see either one, especially early in his career. But
one thing I did want to throw out there is, remember way back when, seems like a million years ago, we did my top 5 position ranks leading up to the draft, and I think he was my 4th or 5th running back. And I said he's kind of the Stranger Things upside down version of Deebo Samuel. Like, if you look at him as a receiver first that can get carries in a Deebo way, that's an interesting way to view him. But he's not as good a receiver as Deebo.
Right. Yeah.
And
it's almost like he's not a good enough pure runner to be the opposite of Deebo, because Deebo's actually runs with more power than Cook does. And he's 30 times bigger.
Right.
So I don't know. Anyway,
he's going to push a pile more, right?
But good player and a fun player. Just a little high. His running back. I'm not usually going to give high grades to highly drafted running backs. Mm-hmm. If you listen to the show, you know that about me. Terrell Bernard, Baylor, inside linebacker in round 3. Then checking in on day 3 picks for the Buffalo Bills, Khalil Shakir. Nice little value, round 5. He could be
that one.
A slot player, and as could Cook. They're trying to just diversify that passing game a little bit there in Buffalo. Matt Ariza, you mentioned there, the punt god in round 6. And look, based on where some other punters went, I actually like this pick. That's where
he was a 3rd punter taken.
That's where you start picking punters in the 6th round. These 4th round punters, get that the heck out of here. So I actually like this one. You get the punt god, and you didn't have to spend a 4th round pick like some other teams did on punters.
Yeah, and frankly, their last couple guys I don't know a whole lot about. Benford, the DB from Villanova, Tenuta, the tackle for Virginia Tech. I was told that Balin Spector, the linebacker from Clemson's a real coach's dream, special teamer, probably is just real hard to cut. But Bernard, the 3rd round pick, and I'm not going to kill anyone for taking a good punter in the 6th round, and the punt god to me were a little bit of that same. We don't have any needs. We'll just take these fun little pieces. I mean, the Bills punt less than any team in the league. That doesn't mean he's not valuable. But Bernard is part of it's because he wasn't on all the lists, so everyone thinks he's overdrafted, and we'll get to that with the Patriots. And we might just be wrong on that. But I mentioned they live in nickel. They have their two linebackers pretty set. And Bernard's a athletic, undersized, run and hit, bad tackling linebacker. That's fine, but I just don't know that that's great. And I think Shakir will be a better version of Cole Beasley for quite a while. I like Shakir a lot.
And clearly, special teams, they went into the draft thinking we have to improve special teams. I think Bernard can be a part of that on coverage units as well as he develops as a linebacker. You mentioned Balin Spector, similar guy, try-hard guy, a guy that's the 53rd man on the roster, and the special teams coach says, we got to take that guy out of camp, and we got to take him with us, that kind of thing. And Benford could probably be that, the corner from Villanova as well. So overall, this draft is, solid. I think they help themselves. I don't like the second-round running back, but I love the first-round pick. I don't have a problem with the punter in the sixth round. That's where you should start looking at punters and special teams. And so they got better on special teams. They got better on defense. And they added a couple of interesting pass catchers to the mix. So, I think it's, solid B draft for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, it just doesn't have the usual nuts and bolts, D lineman, O lineman, big people.
Totally agree. A couple of very different draft classes next, looking at the Miami Dolphins, who traded away a bunch of picks to get veteran players, and the New England Patriots that has been universally panned. We'll see how we feel about that Patriots class when you look at it as a whole next. But I want to let the folks out there know about Rock Auto first. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's pretty much impossible for your local chain store to stock all the parts you need. And you find yourself in line talking to somebody, not really knowing what they're looking at on their screen that is selling you something for your car and not having the full inventory that someplace like Rock Auto can have. It's just not possible for them to have that type of inventory. And Rock Auto has an unbelievable selection. You will be blown away when you go to rockauto.com, seeing the selection of parts for your car or truck. Anything you could possibly need, they have it at Rock Auto. Big parts, little parts. Even if you're not a huge do-it-yourselfer and you're not going to slide underneath your car and, change big parts, you can go find wiper blades and, tail lamps and new carpet for your interior and tons of things that you could do yourself for your vehicle and just keep that car on the road and maintain your vehicle at rockauto.com and not pay that 30%, 50%, even a double markup that you will find at some chain stores or your car dealership. So make sure you let Rock Auto know that Locked On sent you, right? Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box when you go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. I want to thank everybody once again for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Now, for your second listen, check out all the other tons of great shows here that we have at Locked On, including Locked On Dynasty with Matt Williamson. We are going to talk a little bit about Matt Williamson's Dynasty rookie rankings coming up very soon on the show. And once we finish these draft grades programs, it's going to be a lot of fun to dive into those. And we're by the way, make sure if you're not watching us on YouTube right now, make sure you subscribe to the Locked On NFL YouTube channel. That's where you can find Peacock and Williamson on YouTube every day. Plus, you can get the Locked On NFL show. You got Ross Jackson and Chris Carter, Tony Wiggins, and the whole gang repping the entire league. There is no off season for real fans here, so make sure you're subscribed to the Locked On NFL YouTube channel. The Miami Dolphins, Matt. Very small draft class here for Miami. They drafted 4 players.
Yeah, 2 in the 7th round.
Yeah, 2 of them were 7th rounders. Their first pick was a comp pick, so they were just not involved in the first 100 picks of this draft. The 38th pick of the 3rd round, they came in with Georgia linebacker Channing Tindall. So at that point, all of Georgia's linebackers were drafted by the 3rd round. That's pretty amazing, and you can see why Georgia was Georgia. I mean, that team is just unreal. This is one of the most unreal draft classes I've seen out of Georgia this year. They came back in the 4th round with Eric Ezukanma I want to get that name right. Texas Tech wide receiver, 6'2", 209, looks the part, a little rawish sort of a player. Cameron Good out of Cal at other linebacker. So clearly that was the one thing they tried to address in the draft with those few of draft picks. And then Skyler Thompson, the quarterback late in round 7 out of Kansas State. Obviously, you can't give Miami a very good draft grade here, but you have to realize what else they got with it. And when you talk about Tyreek Hill and the Miami Dolphins social media team caused a little stir yesterday, showing a highlight of Tua. First of all, Tua looking very thick, looking like a linebacker.
I need to watch it, yeah.
In OTAs. And it was like, classic social team stuff. It was like, Tua rocket emoji to cheetah Tyreek Hill, and Tua drops back and he tries to throw this bomb, and it's one of those, slow motion social team where you don't see the route, you don't see anything, you just see the ball in the air, and then it pans over to Tyreek Hill, who's just kind of waiting on it like he's almost fielding a punt, and it's like, you couldn't find a better throw than that, and so it made him look kind of bad. It's like, man, was that the best throw from practice? And Tyreek Hill might regret his decision to choose Miami because very different arm talent there between his two quarterbacks, but he is a dynamic player, and he can take the short passes the distance as well. So when you consider Tyreek as part of this draft class and what they were able to do, it's still not a high grade for me, but Miami's trying to compete. They feel like they're ready now with their new regime. How close are they?
I don't know. I think they're still not a contender, to be honest with you, and I still have some Tua doubts. Let's buzz through this class super quick. I mean, obviously it's a small one. Tyndall makes... I'm a big believer that if you're fast at linebacker, you have a fast defense. If you're slow at linebacker, you have a slow defense. Well, they got faster on defense. I heard things like Tyndall will be their Josh Allen spy. Well, that makes perfect sense. They probably don't need him to start until a year from now. Some contracts open up, and I think he's a projected starter a year from now. The Texas Tech receiver, who I'm glad you said his name, I have butchered it every step of the way, is kind of interesting to me in that he is much more Devontae Parker than he is Waddle or Hill. So I still think they want that big-bodied possession jump ball type guy, and physical still presence there. They haven't totally revamped what they look at the position. I know nothing about Cameron Good. I'm sure he's a special teamer, a 224 overall. But Skyler Thompson, I don't know how familiar you are or our listeners are with Matt Waldman, but Matt Waldman does an amazing job of breaking down skill position players in his RSP, his rookie scouting portfolio. I subscribe to it every year. Matt's a good dude. He does amazing work. Went crazy about Skyler Thompson, who doesn't have a lot of snaps, but Matt thinks he is an unbelievable diamond in the rough in the 7th round here. So just remember the name, Skyler Thompson.
Yeah, when Skyler Thompson shows up and takes Tua's job in week 9.
Right.
Then you'll know you need to go buy the RSP from Matt Waldman.
Exactly.
Been reading his stuff for a long time.
And give us a little credit, too, for telling you.
Yeah, absolutely. I did like Skyler Thompson when I saw him a little bit before the draft. And then when I was looking I was like, okay, he's a little something to him. Definitely a draftable player. So overall, though, I don't know. Did they even get any starters? Does Channing Tindall ever win that starting job? Azukama.
Right.
I didn't really put that together. That was a great point by you that he's kind of refills that Devontae Parker role for
that's important.
Catch the back shoulder ball type of guy.
Mm-hmm. If I have any criticism, which is really being ultra critical, considering they had 2 picks in the top 223, could have drafted a center or a guard, but oh well.
Yep. And they did attack offensive line. They attacked everything in free agency. This was the team that was like, we're tired of being close. We want to go win this. We think we can make some noise in this division. We'll see if they can. So it's all about how good their veteran players are. Do they get the right head coach, and do they have the right quarterback in place?
Yeah, we'll see.
I just whatever. C-. No. I don't even know if I love the Tyreek fit there. Like they
gave up a lot.
To give him and pay him. So I almost want to go D+. I'm gonna go D+ here with this draft class.
I tend to think the Tyreek trade is not going to be as glorious as people think.
And D+ is a better grade than I'm gonna spoiler alert. I think a better grade than I'm gonna give the New England Patriots. We talked a little bit about this class before like immediately after the draft, we had the winners and losers podcast.
Right.
You know what? Hold on. I'm gonna pause on this.
Okay.
I want to talk about BetOnline first before we get to this draft class. I think this is going to go long. There's a lot of picks to get to, and I didn't hate all of their picks. I will say that. BetOnline, our partners at BetOnline, continue to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports information. Find out all the latest odds, news, sports developments, including this year's NBA playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights. You can find NFL futures at BetOnline. You can bet on the offensive and defensive rookies of the year. A lot of the players we're talking about. You can put some money on those guys being good with their particular NFL franchises. Not only professional sports, but when things get into the playoffs, you can do live betting at BetOnline, which is always super fun. If you missed the start of the game or you're not sure and you're seeing how a game's going, live betting, esports. There's Vegas casino games as well at BetOnline. So get over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about all of the trends and all of the action at BetOnline, where the game starts. So the New England Patriots draft, Matt, started with a bang, and that this was really fun. I actually really loved the Cole Strange pick, not necessarily for value or anything.
Sure.
But this is what you hope you see on the first night of the draft. You're tuning into the draft. It's so much fun. Everybody puts so much work into it. All these analysts chime in, and then you get this huge curveball. And thankfully, you've got a team like the Patriots who will give you a curveball now and again. And Cole Strange out of Chattanooga going with the 29th pick in the first round after the Pats had traded down. So clearly, I think, and I think there's a couple teams like this. I think both the Packers and the Buccaneers were sitting there looking at, and I think maybe even the Arizona Cardinals. I think they all probably thought one of those guards was going to fall to them.
Yeah,
right. They all got out of there. They all traded out because those guards went earlier than expected.
I think that is a key component to this, Zion and Kenyon Green.
Right. And so the Patriots at moved down, and they're sitting there at 29. They're like, well, our best guy is Cole Strange, so we're going to turn in the card. And that's the way they do it. And, famously, they only have 75 guys on their draft board every year. And so they clearly think that these are all do your job guys, or they would have selected them. And I actually really like Cole Strange because I think he's a starter. I think they got themselves an NFL starter.
He might be Joe Thuney,
Yeah, Logan Mankins, classic Patriots late first round guard pick. So for that reason, this isn't their worst pick at all, even though this is the one everyone points to and said, what are you guys doing? Because I thought,
okay. I said that because I have more criticisms too.
Right, because I thought, okay, who's drunk in the Patriots draft room when they turned in their second round pick, which was Tyquan Thornton. And I know he blew up the combine. He's really fast, 6'2", 180 whatever pounds. But he plays like the class. We went over this around the combine time, Matt. Remember we had the episode where we went through all the fastest combine times in the last 20 years? Mm-hmm. They're almost all bad players.
That's true. Right. They're all sprinters.
Run 4.2s, it's not good for your outlook in the NFL. There was
receiver,
Bailey and Chris Johnson, and everyone else was awful, really bad players that didn't have careers. That maybe a couple special teams gunners on the list, and maybe Tyquan Thornton can do that. And Bill Belichick loves him some special teams, so maybe there's an element of that to it. But I didn't see a player that I thought was ever going to be a starting caliber player. And if you're drafting a second round running back or a second round wide receiver and a fairly high pick too, this is early mid first or early mid second round player in Tyquan Thornton. He's clearly fast. He's clearly tall. But I just didn't see it. And I didn't see a guy who's going to be mossing people at, when you think it's someone who's 4'2" and 6'2". I think he can make some plays down the field. He's okay in that regard, but I didn't see a player. And I just think he just gets lost in an already very mediocre wide receiver group for the Patriots. So this is my least favorite pick by far. Way worse than the Cole Strange pick because Cole Strange is going to be a starter in the league. Tyquan Thornton is not, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I looked at Thornton like, boy, I'd like him in the fourth round. He's really fast. He's tough for a speedster. I think he's going to be a nice complement 3-4 receiver on a good team. Wish he was a Patriot or a Chief. And one theme here is I've always thought the Patriots were one of the slowest teams in the league. Well, they addressed their speed problems to some degree, but in the meantime, they got smaller too. They picked little fast guys, Pierre Strong, Marcus Jones. So that's a theme here as well. And you've referenced this a few times, and not to put words in your mouth, but you kind of mentioned Pickens as this draft's Metcalf, and Pickens Sky Moore and Pierce all went after Thornton. I think he's this year's Andy Isabella.
Right. Or he might have more of a career than Isabella.
Probably.
So maybe like Mecole Hardman was another one of those names.
Right.
From that second round, the speed guy, and you think you're going to get more because he's fast, and he just kind of doesn't develop. And sometimes that stride that you need to be that fast is what hinders you as a route runner, and that's what I see with Thornton. And I don't see some crazy ball skills down the field. And maybe there's more to develop there, but it just felt so high to pick Tyquan Thornton. So really scratching my head at this point on what the Patriots are doing. But then they come back and have a really nice selection. Love Marcus Jones.
Super quick. What I meant by that with the Metcalf Isabella thing is just 3-4 years from now, we're going to be like, what were they thinking with those three on the board that they decided Thornton over them? You know,
right? No, exactly.
Yeah,
we're going to go back and look, the Steelers are so good at drafting wide receivers. We're going to look at Pickens and say, man, how did
who had a higher grade on Thornton?
Go ahead and pick. How did Thornton? How did Mechie? How did Wan'Dale Robinson? How did these guys go in front of George Pickens?
Yep. I love the Marcus Jones pick too. Far and away my favorite pick they made.
Yes, absolutely. And he's really undersized. Maybe they'll try him on the outside, but he's a nickel corner all day. Late third round. I think it's fine value. Really fun player to watch. If he was bigger, he wouldn't even have been available there. So
elite returner. Elite.
Yes. Oh yeah. Return man. So special teams, a theme here with those Bill Belichick drafts. Then you come back on day 3 with Jack Jones, Arizona State corner, felt high. Pierre Strong Jr., who I love, more speed. Again, that was clearly something that multiple 4.3 and a 4.2 guy here so far in the draft for Bill Belichick. Pierre Strong, though, is a player that it still felt a little high in the 4th round, even though I was okay with it. And as a player I liked, but, I thought he would be there more 5th, 6th round type of a guy out of South Dakota State, speedy running back, though. And then it's like, come on, Bailey Zappi in the 4th round? I thought he was a 7th round quarterback. You just drafted a quarterback last year. So you're spending your team, your Patriots roster is so good that you're drafting a long-term backup quarterback in the 4th round. I just don't see the overall strategy here on what the Patriots were doing. And even though there's a couple picks I actually liked, just horrible value almost all the way down the board, aside from maybe one pick. And then Kevin Harris, South Carolina running back. So second running back, clearly they're trying to add to that position group, a very different running back, 5'10", 220, bowling ball shaped running back out of South Carolina. Sam Roberts, Northwest Missouri State defensive tackle, who is more of a sort of a 5 technique, 6'5", 290 build. LSU guard Chasen Hines in the 6th round, and then in the 7th round, Andrew Stuber, Michigan guard. So back-to-back guards at the end of the class as well. Overall, this is an F grade for me. It's a terrible draft class for how many picks they had, what they could have done. And who knows? I mean, Cole Strange might have been there in the 2nd round for them. They draft a better player in round 1, and then you push everybody down around, and at least that would make me feel a lot better about this class.
Yeah, and same with me. And the more I've thought about the Strange pick, the less critical I am of it. But the rest of the draft, to your point, I'm more critical of. And again, small, fast, and you leave this draft with 2 running backs and a backup quarterback like that. The Thornton stuff we talked up. The Jack Jones, I thought was too early. And then you follow that up with 2 running backs after taking Ramondre Stevenson last year, who looks like a keeper, and a backup quarterback. And I know during the Brady era, they drafted Jimmy and Castle and, some guys that didn't hit. And they're believers of keep replenishing that. And they probably had a better grade on Zappi than a 4th round pick. Great. But you're not in that position anymore. You don't have Brady to cover all your problems, and you're not the best team anymore. To use 3 picks in a row on 2 running backs and a backup quarterback to me was nuts. And I liked Strong.
Yeah, and I like Strong too. And that was one of their better picks, and I didn't even like it all that much. So
right.
Anyway, yeah. So with what they were given too, so many draft picks, so much to work with, and no problems trading down in the 1st round either. But
I think they have Houston's 3rd round pick next year too, which is noteworthy.
And maybe instead of an F, say D-. Like they got 2 starters. If you consider Marcus Jones, if he jumps right into the nickel right away, he could be a starter. And I think Cole Strange is starting, center or guard, probably guard.
But they're not a starting left tackle or edge pass rusher. I mean, they got a starting guard and nickel corner.
Yeah.
So
not a great draft class in my
opinion. I don't like it much at all.
And did they get better? Like, you don't look at the Patriots and go, oh man, okay, Patriots got better.
Right. Like this next team, everyone's going to say they got better.
Yeah, you lost a guard and you overdrafted a guard to replace him. You lost a
You
corner.
gave Shaq Mason away.
Yeah, and you added a nickel, but you like, is he gonna is Marcus Jones gonna play outside at 5'8", 175?
I don't think.
So anyway, Bill Belichick, what are you doing? Getting senile over there in his later years.
Right.
Who's last here? Okay, we had a
Yes.
very different draft class here for the New York Jets, and everyone's giving them an A. And I think you kind of have to give them an A just because they had so many high picks and it fell great for them, and they maneuvered the draft. And another team that every pick was involved except for one with the trade, which is that fourth overall pick they earned there. But the 10th came from Seattle, finishing up that Jamal Adams trade. Ahmad Gardner, love the pick, 4th overall. Garrett Wilson, I think he was the right selection at number 10 of the wide receivers, especially seeing how the wide receiver run went right there. Jermaine Johnson, defensive end out of Florida State. They moved back up to get him, saw him up close and personal at the Senior Bowl. Then Breece Hall, if you're going to draft a second-round running back, make sure you get the best running back in the class and make sure you've already drafted 3 other starters. So that makes me feel better even about Breece Hall. And in a way, I felt better about the Kenneth Walker pick by the Seahawks with those second-round running backs than even some of the third-round running backs we saw, and better than the Buffalo Bills taking James Cook where they did, because at least they got a really good, like, every down back versus some other backs that are just like, oh, what are you getting? You're getting a committee back in the 3rd round. I would rather take a star running back in the 2nd round than a committee back in the 3rd round, even though I wouldn't necessarily grade a 2nd-round running back high.
Mm-hmm.
After the Breece Hall pick, and look, 4 starters, right? Then you go Jeremy Ruckert, a tight end, sort of an underrated tight end in the 3rd round out of Ohio State. Max Mitchell, I like him as a developmental offensive tackle out of Louisiana. Raging Cajun in the 4th. And their final pick was another developmental player, Michael Clemens, high upside defensive end in the 4th round. So I love every pick. Great draft. Good job, Joe Douglas.
Yeah, 100%. And he had more cards in his hand than just about any team, so you better hit on those guys. But I love that all their picks came in the 4th round or earlier. None of them are throwaway picks. If I were grading players, actually putting grades on players, Ahmad Gardner would have got my best grade in this entire class. They got him at 4. I like Garrett Wilson more than Drake London, who went right ahead of him. Everyone's raving about the Jermaine Johnson pick. And at 26, I like it quite a bit. But I do think it's pretty clear that draft Twitter liked Jermaine Johnson more than the NFL did. Pass rushers wouldn't have fallen 18 picks farther than we all expected if there wasn't some concern. So he's not a home run that some people make it out to be. But boy,
I bet that the Jets had a higher grade than 26 on him.
Sure.
But I think league consensus was probably more in the 20s, where a lot of people were throwing him to the Jets at pick 10 in their mock drafts.
I heard that Seattle, I think they picked 9, and the Jets at 10 both loved the guy, but they were really the only 2 teams that were super high on him. And so, like, for Vegas odds, as soon as you got past those guys, it was going to hit the over. You know what I mean? But not that he's a bad player. And put him opposite Lawson, could be really, really good in this offense, in this defense. And throw Michael Clemens in there as well. We know that this defense is predicated on high upside type pass rushers. I don't have a problem with Hall at all. I thought you'd have more of a problem with it, to be honest with you, because traded up for a running back to 36. A lot of people thought Houston was going to take him. But I also think that, not that there's an exception to the running back draft rule, but if you can get an every down guy that also catches passes, which Hall does and is a factor in the passing game, for a quarterback that needs every bit of help he possibly can, I think that pushes me more towards adding a running back, either with free agency money, or if it's going to make my quarterback's life a lot easier, I'm all for it. Even if it means an overpay on a talented running back. Ruckert was one of my favorite tight ends, even though he comes in at 3rd on the depth chart. They signed Azoma, and they have guys there, but I think he has a chance to be a really good all-around player, much better pro than college player. And Max Mitchell can't be forgotten either. I mean, a lot of people thought they might go tackle early. I think Mitchell, at a minimum, will be a swing tackle in this league, which probably means when it's all said and done, over his career, he'll start a lot of games and get you through. And, the Mekhi Becton thing is still a little foggy.
You nailed it with the Breece Hall stuff too, and it's the reason it's an A, not an A+ draft for me here with the New York Jets, because it's still a pretty high pick with a very high second round running back that you traded up for. It's a lot of resources for a running back, and I just don't think running backs add that many wins to your football team. But when you look at the other stuff that goes along with the pick, first of all, that you already made 3 draft picks and you drafted 3 starters first, because that's where I'd have a problem. Is if
and they're all premium
was a running back that you're trading up for, so you're not helping your football team.
And you didn't draft guards and safeties. You drafted corner, receiver, edge. So now you can take a less,
So
position.
That allows them to do something that can make their offense more dynamic. He has value in the passing game, which is key. And he helps your young quarterback. I think those are all very important. And if you help your quarterback by drafting a player, it makes that player more valuable automatically than if you just look at the pick of a running back at 37 or wherever it was in a vacuum.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, if it makes Zach Wilson's life on game day a lot easier, cool.
Yeah. And now they just have to not give him a huge second contract if he becomes a star running back in that wide zone running game, which I think he could.
He could. And he's going to be very fantasy viable. He's the dynasty rookie pick number 1.
Number 1. I was going to ask, far and away, 1.1
far and away.
Dynasty leagues. Okay.
Yeah. Drake London's generally 2, but there's a lot of controversy with after number 1.
And I want to add a little bit of an extra wrinkle to this. I think both the Jets and the 49ers came away better for not doing some Debo trade. I think this makes the Jets better long-term than if they would have given up a couple of these picks for Debo Samuel. I like them better now, as long as Wilson is good, and I think he is going to be good.
Yeah. You're talking about Garrett, not Zach. Who knows about Zach?
Yes. And Zach. But Zach has all the – and look.
No more excuses.
Yep, no more excuses. You've got a ton of talent around you. You're 3+ deep at wide receiver with high-level NFL players. You're
got 3 tight ends now, 2 running backs. Right.
I mean, Kyle Shanahan's not calling the plays, but we know that offense works in the NFL. The defense is going to give you the ball back more often. You've got a running game. This is a vote of confidence for Mekhi Becton, right? That they didn't draft a tackle until the 4th round. So,
they got a great pair of guards.
Yes. So, they added to the offensive line as well and even overpaid, but that's okay because you're trying to help your young quarterback. So no excuses there. And we see NFL quarterbacks. This is the year that take the biggest step is between year 1 and 2. And usually they jump up again between year 2 and 3. But we've got to see that from Zach Wilson. And they'll know a lot more about him now.
Yeah. And this is what you do. And Miami did this to some degree. It's why you sign Armstead and trade for Tyreek is we're going to make your life as a young quarterback as easy as possible because we know it's really hard. And you're not a transcendent player at this stage of your career, nor do we expect you to be. Sink or swim, young fella. And if you sink, we'll go get somebody else.
Yep, go get somebody else. But this looks like, on paper, the best Jets team we've seen in a long
time. Yeah.
Can they pass the Patriots? I'm not going to put them above the Bills, but and the Patriots still have Bill Belichick over there.
I'm not sure who's 2 in this division right now.
Yeah, I mean, I might put Patriots 4.
Maybe.
Roster-wise, they're 4.
They have the worst roster in the division. But they probably will win 10 games.
It's going to be fun. They probably will. It's going to be fun, though. I can't wait to watch this division. It's one of the more exciting to me because obviously the Bills are a really good team and they're developing into a juggernaut. But there's some up-and-comers there. And can the Patriots still do that Patriots thing and just you feel like they're going to fall off a cliff at some point. But you're never going to with Bill Belichick. You're just not.
Probably not. But, again, I think Bill the coach is a lot better than Bill the GM lately.
Oh, no doubt. Thanks everybody for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen. Moving on to the AFC North draft grades tomorrow. Thanks. And for your second listen, make sure you're checking out the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast with Matt Williamson. I'm doing Locked On 49ers every day. Your team is covered right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, no matter the sport. Matt and I back tomorrow right here. AFC North draft grades. Peacock and Williamson.